These atrocities are beyond war.
Days have passed since the violence started in Manipur.
Yes.
And it took just one video for Prime Minister Narendra Modi to break his silence.
Very unfortunate, I must say. Forget about 79 days. For such scale of violence, even a week is a long time. Silence is deafening. And I am very disappointed as the leader of my people. We as a country need to learn to go beyond party lines. The head of the government was at the forefront of building which maligns the entire victim community. The actual perpetrators of the violence, not to condone them, I think are less guilty than the people who instigated.
Amid all this, how do you see the role of army?
The army is the only saving grace. But for the army, what Pramod Singh had warned on national television of wiping out the entire Kuki community would have happened by now. The central government is holding all the cards, and that is why we're still pleading with the central government. We have no hope whatsoever of justice or whatever from the state government.
Is the separate administration the only solution?
That's the only way out now. Forget about the ordinary citizens. See, even as an elected MLA, there is no security of life for me to go and attend the assembly in Imphal. Citizens of India, don't the Kuki people deserve an arrangement where they can live with security? The media in Manipur is as yellow as it gets. It will soon die of jaundice. Dada Rabindranath Tagore had written during the freedom struggle that the people in the region can wake up without fear in their minds.
On July 19th, that's 2 days ago, a video went viral on social media. In that video, at least 2 women were paraded naked and sexually assaulted. After this, Prime Minister Narendra Modi broke his silence for the first time, and Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, called the incident barbaric. 2 months after the FIR was registered, 4 men have been arrested. But this is not the only incident of crimes against women. In a letter written by 10 Kuki MLAs, they pointed out there are 4 other such incidents of crimes against women. 7 of them are from BJP. I have one of the MLAs who was one of the signatories of the letter. We have with us Paolienlal Haokip. He is an MLA from Saikot Assembly Constituency in Churachandpur. Haokip sir, welcome to this NL interview.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My first question is regarding the 4 incidents of crimes against women you mentioned in the letter. What are those cases that you mentioned in the, if you could tell us?
No, we have listed it out on our press statement. You can refer to that. These are very unfortunate incidents wherein women, in one case it were nursing students who were staying in their hostel. Another incident was 2 girls working in a car wash. And the third, of course, was of a woman captured from a Kuki colony called Chakon in Imphal. I think in one of the cases, the 2 women who worked in a car wash, they have already been killed after being raped. In the other cases, I think there were some miraculous escapes. And the 4th one that we have mentioned was, of course, not a case of rape. It was a gruesome beheading of a Kuki villager by the name of David Teak. I mean, if there is a war between communities or between countries, getting killed as part of the game. But even in war, there is a code of ethics. You shoot a man, your enemy, that is part of the war. But when you molest and when you sow depravity, inhuman depravity in killing people, I think that needs to be categorized differently and condemned by all right-thinking people in the world. So these atrocities are beyond war. This shows certain level of human depravity which needs to be condemned in the highest degree.
79 days have passed since the violence started in Manipur.
Yes.
And it took just one video for Prime Minister Narendra Modi to break his silence.
Very unfortunate, I must say.
And he says, if I could quote him, he says the incident is a shameful act for any civilized society. The entire nation is feeling ashamed. Is it too late and too little?
I would put it this way, Asif. We have been crying hoarse. We have met the Union Home Minister. We have sought, as representatives of the people, an appointment with the Prime Minister himself. There was no response. Till today, we're still waiting for that opportunity to apprise him the gravity of the situation. Now, just assuming that the Union Home Minister had failed to report to the Prime Minister the gravity of the situation, which is very unlikely. Even so, even from independent sources, 79 days, forget about 79 days, for such scale of violence, even a week is a long time, and many lives could be saved. But the silence is deafening, and I am very disappointed as the leader of my people who are suffering.
Is it correct to say before he went to the United States, you tried to reach him?
Yes.
And do you think that he has misplaced priorities?
I think that is what the country is assuming now. It is not for me to judge.
But you are one of the voices of the Kuki Mizo community.
Yes, for us especially, it feels that priorities are entirely misplaced. I would not for once, negate or discount the importance of a visit to the United States as head of the government. There are international relations that we have to take care of. Our trade with other countries is as important as any other matter. But when your people are being killed, I think the least modicum of humanity demands that you should pay some time, some attention to try and resolve it, which I feel is lacking.
Do you think if the video hadn't gone viral, Prime Minister Modi would not have spoken?
That is what the country thinks, and that is what it turned out to be. And that's why I had tweeted for the other cases that we discussed earlier on. Should it necessarily require audio visuals of those cases also to surface for the Chief Minister, for the Prime Minister, for the Home Minister to notice?
Are people in possession of those audio visuals of other cases that you talked about?
That I'm not aware. But my contention is, do we need audio visuals? Is not the state government supposed to take action on such, inhuman cruelties? For a fact, the particular incident that had surfaced day before, the FIR had already been registered earlier, much earlier. And the Chief Minister claims he came to know of it yesterday, which, given the fact that he's also the Home Minister, shows the complete, total incompetence or a cover-up. And I think it is not incompetence. It is a cover-up. And hadn't the video surfaced, he would not still have admitted such inhumanity, such depravities occurring under his watch.
You're talking about the cover-up by Chief Minister of Manipur, Biren Singh.
Yes.
Would he have continued if he did not have support of the central government?
That is what I am also beginning to wonder. And I think, honestly, that is what the country is beginning to question now. You have a chief minister. I happen to be from the party, but on certain things, on basic human rights issues, on issues affecting the dignity of a person as a human being, we as a country need to learn to go beyond party lines. We need to call what is black, what is white.
I'll come back to the party line question. In that video, one of the women, she gave an interview to the Indian Express, and where she talks about how police was complicit in the attack or in the alleged rape that she...
You know what, Siv, I'll tell you, the focus of the entire country is, I'm sorry to say this, a little still skewed. Like the Prime Minister's statement, it is still seen as an isolated case of assault on women. We fail to focus on the ethnic cleansing that is happening, because of which such depravity had occurred. And we fail to focus on the instigators of the violence. The head of the government was at the forefront of building, a narrative which maligns the entire victim community. And you have the so-called cultural or civil society organizations within the Métis society, like the Meitei Lipun and the Arambai Tengol, building negative narratives against the Kuki community for long. We have been turning a blind eye to that, and the actual perpetrators of the violence, not to condone them, I think are less guilty than the people who instigated the young minds into hating a particular community to the extent that they ended up committing such depravity.
You're calling it ethnic cleansing.
That is what it is. I'm not calling it. That's what it is.
But violence has occurred from both sides. Now Métis can't go back to the hills, and Kukis, they can't go back to the valley.
Violence occurring from both sides is something I would like to contest. Because, of course, on the 3rd and 4th May, violence was reciprocal. And even there, the Kukizo community, while they reacted to the cleansing of Kukizo colonies in Imphal Valley by chasing out the Meitei community localities in the hill districts, they ensured that they are safe. No one was harmed physically. Only their presence was, reciprocally detested. Now, after the initial thing, which goes on for about a week, I would say, 99% of the violence happens because of the attacks by the Meitei militia, alongside the police commandos on Kuki inhabited villages on the fringes. So the violence would stop the moment Mr. Biren Singh is able to rein in his militia, which he was a part of and a leader in radicalizing the militia, the day he can rein in such elements and the day he stops the police forces, the state police, from aiding those militias in attacking Kukis or villages, that's the end of violence. But the end of violence is not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily translate into peace. Peace, for peace to come, and for lasting peace to come in Manipur, it needs a political settlement, and I'm looking forward to the Honorable Prime Minister, despite his late reaction, in realizing the political gravity of the situation. It's not just a law and order situation. It's not an aberration against his Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign. It is a deep political problem. It has deep roots of denial of constitutional rights to the tribal hill communities in Manipur.
Why I said that violence has happened from both sides, because I was looking at the one of the affidavits which was filed in the Supreme Court, where the Manipur government has given the breakup of deaths. Imphal East and West, they recorded 29 deaths each. Churachandpur, which is Kuki-dominated district, recorded 26 deaths. Then Kakching, 18 deaths. Bishnupur, 18 deaths. Kangpokpi, 8 deaths.
First of all, whatever data that the state government furnishes needs to be viewed with a lot of skepticism in these times, because the data are tweaked to favor a certain narrative. And we must remember that the state government is totally compromised and is complicit in the violence on the Kukizo community. That is why it took this long.
You're saying the data has been present to set a certain kind of narrative?
Yes. So the state government data, whatever they have furnished, I would think twice before taking them on face value.
But any Kuki Mizo Zo group, have they done any data collection about the deaths to counter this government data?
I mean, that's occurring on the Kukizo community in the hill districts. We have the data, but those dead within the Imphal Valley, we do have some kind of a data, but the bodies need to be verified, which is yet to be done till today, after 79 days. The bodies are supposedly lying in the government hospital morgues, and we have no access. So the numbers could be much more than what we have now.
You just mentioned about the way police are working in Manipur. These ethnic fault lines, even in police force, did they exist even before the violence?
No, it was after the violence, because it's only after the violence that the Kukizo personnel who were in the state forces are either let off or had to escape from their places of posting in the valley areas to flee for their lives. So, like I said earlier, in this kind of situation, blaming actual perpetrators as per law is also one thing, but you have to look at the larger picture, and you have to look at who instigates what. And let me put this on record, that if leaders of the Meitei Lipun like Pramod Singh or leaders of the Aram by Tengol are involved, I'm not saying they are less culpable, but if you have representatives of the people like the MP, Rajya Sabha MP, who openly are hand in gloves with the militia groups, the two militia groups, and if you have a chief minister on top of that, hand in glove with such militia, What do you expect?
Amid all this, how do you see the role of army?
The army is the only saving grace. But for the army, what Pramod Singh had warned on national television of wiping out the entire Kuki community would have happened by now. The only saving grace is the Indian army. And initially, they could not effectively deal with the situation because political direction was lacking. That is very unfortunate.
Can Methi Lipun be described as one of the fringe elements that talk about?
It was a fringe element. But once they have the support of the head of government and one of the two members of parliament from the state, they get emboldened and they grew in size and strength. It's a very, very dangerous game that they're playing. And this needs to be handled politically, condemned by all sections of society.
Now I'll come to the negotiation part. Since the video went viral, have you received any invite from the central government?
None. Instead, we still have to seek appointments to try and meet them, which is also unfortunate.
What was the last time when you sent an invite, sent a request?
It was just before the Prime Minister left for the US that we have put in an application to his office for an appointment with the 10 Kuki MLAs. We're still waiting on that, and we haven't made any other requests so far, but we intend to in the few days ahead of us.
Since May 3rd, there have been few rounds of talks between MLAs from Manipur and the central government leadership, including union ministers.
Oh, we have met the Union Home Minister once, and there have been other meetings, not necessarily with the MLAs. Some of the representatives have sort of sympathized with the situation, and I'm hopeful that they see the need for a political settlement for lasting peace, so that the people can wake up without fear in their minds and go about with living their lives as citizens of India.
But despite several rounds of talks, and Home Minister Amit Shah also visited Manipur, the situation is very volatile now.
The situation is still volatile, and as a community being under attack, our village defense forces still cannot let down their guard, because attacks are sporadic, it can happen anytime. In very few areas, the Indian Army has successfully established buffer zones. Those are the only saving grace of the situation. So my salute to the Indian Army. I wish their capability, their strength, their commitment to the country can soon be backed by a political will for them to establish peace.
But it seems from your remarks vis-a-vis the central government, seems that you have fewer complaints to the central government than the state government.
Fewer complaints to the central government? No, we don't have any complaint with the state government now. Our complaints are with the central government, that they recognize the separation, the human separation, the segregation with a separate administrative setup for the Kuki people. We're not seeking anything from the state government now, and we're not even accepting anything from the state government now.
I'll come back to your demand of separate administration. But before I come to that, I'll ask you one question about the political alliances in the state and outside state. There was on July 18th, NDA held a mega rally where 38 parties came together. And one of them was Kuki People's Alliance, which has 2 MLAs. And these 2 MLAs are also part of your group.
Yes.
So does it mean that they don't view central government in as bad light as state government?
Well, they happened to be in the alliance before all the troubles broke out. I don't know particularly if the KPA had actually participated in that conclave, which was kind of India gearing up for 2024. Our problem is much more, I would call it regional, local, and it is not a concern related with the general elections so much. We'd like the party in power to see through the need for establishing permanent peace in the region.
But you've been demanding president's rule in the state.
Well,
it's up to the central government. Central government, if it
I
wants to do it.
have been saying that is a call for the central leadership to take. There were so many options before them, constitutional options.
But 79 days is too long a time for the killings to go on.
Yes, it's too long a time, unacceptable.
But it seems that Kuki MLAs are ready to be with the central leadership, even though the situation has not been resolved.
Well,
because the way I see the things, the central government holds all the cards.
the central government is holding all the cards, and that is why we're still pleading with the central government. We have no hope whatsoever of justice or whatever from the state government.
But have you thought of leaving the BJP? Because
Well, nothing is off the table. Politics is sometimes a waiting game. We have to see how things progresses. We are elected to represent the interest of our people, and if there comes a time and if there evolves a situation where remaining with a particular party is going to betray the trust that the people have given us, then we'll cross that bridge when we reach there.
But as of now, as things stand now, you think it's beneficial for you to, or for your fellow MLAs, 7 of them are from BJP, to stay in the party?
Well,
is it beneficial for you and for your people also?
the party is not about Biren Singh alone. Or the party is not about a few persons who might have betrayed the visions of the party for the country, who might have hijacked the name of the party for their vested interest. So there's nothing wrong, I feel, in keeping faith in the party. It may be delayed, but that they see the reality as it is also one of my responsibilities. And I have been reaching out to party leaders also. In fact, I have written to the state party president before the violence broke out, expressing my concerns about the way in which the chief minister is handling certain things, including the narrative that maligns a particular community in the state of the economy and other things.
Has the party been receptive?
I have also, unfortunately, before the state president could react to whatever I have written to her, the troubles began. And there's a complete breakdown of communication. It's totally separated.
What about the central BJP leadership? Have they been receptive to your concerns?
Well, I have aired my concerns to 1 or 2 leaders. I'm glad that they have patiently listened through whatever concerns that I have expressed. These are perhaps complex matters for them because their familiarity with the region is also, as the whole of India is, a little lacking. So they might be taking time, but I'm still hopeful that they see through the reality.
But do you agree that the patient hearing by the BJP leadership has not resulted into
tangible actions?
Tangible action.
Not so far, yes. I regret that. But it's a situation of hoping against hope, that they remember the concerns that I have expressed to them and translate those into action that will bring peace to the region. And most importantly, as Dada Rabindranath Tagore had written during the freedom struggle, that the people in the region can wake up without fear in their minds. I pray that people in power work towards that. The sooner the better.
Now I'll come to your demand of separate administration. You and 9 other MLAs, you wrote a letter to the center and state also. Is it correct? To the
No,
central
we had
government.
written to the Union Home Minister.
So if I could read out from the letter, our people can no longer exist under Manipur, as the hatred against our tribal community reached such a height that MLAs, ministers, pastors, police and civil officers, laymen, women and even children were not spared, not to mention the destruction of places of worship, homes and properties. Is the separate administration the only solution?
That's the only way out now. Forget about the ordinary citizens, say, even as an elected MLA. There is no security of life for me to go and attend the assembly in Imphal. If you remember, one of our colleagues, who by the way was advisor to the chief minister, was lynched and is still recuperating. He barely survived. So in such a situation, as citizens of India, don't the Kuki people deserve an arrangement where they can live with security without fear? Don't we, as citizens of India, all deserve that? Should the greed for tribal land of a majority community be an obstacle in ensuring the marginalized communities the right to live without fear?
What are the geographical boundaries of the separate administration that you are seeking?
Well, the tribal areas in Manipur had been defined in 1972 in the presidential order. It's clearly defined, so there's no confusion. The hill areas inhabited by the Kuki community only. We are not demanding any extra Meitei territory. The territories we have the right under the constitution and we have inhabited since India became a nation. Those are our limited demands.
But Kuki are not the only tribal groups.
Yes, they're Nagas, they have their demands.
Nagas have opposed separate administration, saying that it should be done on the basis of Naga peace process.
That is what the Naga demand is. I don't have, and the Kuki people don't have any objection to the Nagas being granted a similar arrangement in all the Naga inhabited areas. Now, one of the problematic issues in the politics of Manipur is imaginary claims on historical rights over land, right? This whole narrative created about who is indigenous, who is not indigenous, is a superfluous debate created by vested interest. Basically, out of greed. Now, India became a nation. India became independent in 1947 and we became a republic in 1952. Under the constitution, we have rights. If today if all sections of people are to claim pre-independence rights on land and all that, what would India be? Total chaos.
But beyond the historical perspective that you're giving, how would you square up with the Nagas' opposition to your demand?
Whatever land inhabited today by the Kuki community and whatever land inhabited by the Nagas today, those should be recognized.
But there would be areas, there would be districts where both communities are living together.
I mean,
it would be like ghettoization at the macro level of Manipur.
See, if you really want a political solution, those are not insurmountable obstacles. You have two villages neighboring each other, one Kuki, one Naga. Ask them, ask the villages with which administration they want to be with. That is the fairest possible way of solving a problem. It need not be necessarily contiguous. We have examples in Pondicherry where, island pockets are administered according to the wishes of the people living there. So such kind of apprehensions are just creating or building hurdles where there aren't any.
I'll come to the question of looting of arms.
Yes.
Around 4,000 arms were looted.
Are they looted or are they gifted? That is what needs to be investigated. I cannot in my wildest dreams imagine a neutral security force of a state allowing the looting of so much arm and ammunition without any resistance. I can understand if after defending the state property furiously, they are overpowered, then that's believable. Because if 5,000 people came down on some 400 people, then it's possible that some arms might be looted. But without resistance, without any resistance, that is a giveaway. It's not.
One argument given in support of looting, or as you're saying, arms were gifted, is that some Meitei leaders are claiming that it was necessary or it was required because there are a lot of Kuki insurgent groups. They have sophisticated weapons to protect ourselves.
The Kuki insurgent groups are under what they call suspension of operations with the central government, and most of their arms are under double lock and key. The kind of lies, the kind of false narratives that is being brought up by the state government and the majority Meitei community to justify whatever unconstitutional actions that they have taken is amazing. There's a famous saying to the effect that fact is stranger than fiction. I think that applies to the kind of fake news, fake narratives that is being at play in Manipur for the past almost 3 months.
Yeah. Before we conclude this interview, I'll ask, Newslaundry does a lot of stories on media, how media is covering particular issue. I also wrote one story about how Manipur media is covering Manipur violence.
That is the same to journalism.
But how do you see how the mainland media and Manipur media have covered the violence? What are the big takeaways? What we need to learn? What we are getting right or what we are getting wrong? Okay,
there is a big distinction between mainland media and the media in Manipur. The media in Manipur is as yellow as it gets. It will soon die of jaundice. As far as the mainland media is concerned, some have the habit of reporting whatever is fed to them without really investigating whether what's served on their plate is true or not. Few media houses behave like that. And also, one of the problems is mainland Indians, mostly their awareness about the Northeast is very limited. So the journalists, the reporters are one from that crowd. So their knowledge is very limited. Whereas we in the Northeast, we know everything about the country. The Mathura, Ellora, Ajanta caves, the beaches of Goa. I think we need to relook the education system in the country also, because so little of the history of the communities in the Northeast India features in the syllabi of the education system that we have, be it CBSE or whatever. That is also a challenge that we need to address. And once they get to see through the facade of false narratives and all that, the mainland media does come through and served journalism right. That's how I see it.
When the violence started, the immediate trigger was the demand by Meitei communities to be included in scheduled tribe category.
Would I call that the immediate trigger of the violence?
Or before that, were there underlying fault lines, ethnic fault lines between
as
the
I
two
told you,
communities?
there were ethnic fault lines. And I have been saying in my various interviews with the media, it is the failure to observe the constitutional provisions that has led to the fault lines, basically. The Constitution of India had provided for certain rights for the tribals as part of the positive discrimination that the Constitution holds. So tribal areas are basically protected. Now, in the Assembly, to ensure that the tribal rights are protected, what is called the Hill Areas Committee is put in place under the Constitution. But that was not allowed to function as it should. Matters which relate to the hill areas, had seldom been referred to the Hill Areas Committee as required under the Constitution. That has led to a lot of hill areas being constituted as reserve forest without following due procedures and without referring the matter to the Hill Areas Committee because it affects the hill areas. Now, the other example is most of the resource allocations under the tribal sub-plan and all that has continuously been diverted by the state government to other purposes without the funds reaching the tribal areas. And you have the Delimitation Commission, which based on the census of 2001 had recommended an increase in the representation of the tribal areas in the state assembly. That was opposed to that nail by the majority community. And the last UPA government had brought out a presidential ordinance deferring the delimitation exercise in the state. Now, denial of proportionate representation is one of the gravest denial of rights under the Constitution. Those things are happening as a matter of, as if they were routine things. And I started challenging all those as a representative. But sadly, the tribal representation also happened to be weak, because most tribals are either first generation educated people, or some are not at all educated. They fail to perceive the role of an elected representative in, safeguarding the rights under the Constitution. Most elected MLAs are fascinated with the developmental funds and all that. Those are, of course, important, but the rights guaranteed under the Constitution, they need to be respected for peace to prevail in the land. Those had long been neglected since the formation of the state, first as a union territory and thereafter in 1972 as a state. Those things have created deep fault lines. And if you listen to the majority community narrative, they would talk about how unfair it is that 10% of the land area is inhabited by 53% of the population and all that. I'm telling you, there's no land pressure at present in Manipur. If you take the valley, which is 10%, and the entire population living there, and if you compare that to the all India land ratio, population to land ratio, it is not land pressure. It is a narrative that is built to grab tribal land against the Constitution.
Then it's not wrong to say that land is the root cause of...
In a way, yes.
...the conflict.
Land per se is not the root cause. The majority community's greed for tribal land is the root cause. I'd put it that way.
But you don't think it's justified that 10%, the 53% of population, they are living on 10% of land and they want to move out or they want to have... But
See,
you're calling it greed.
It is greed. There, if you look at the map, if you Google it, the 10% of the valley is plain area and the habitations are still very limited. 100 years from now also, there will be no land pressure in Manipur. I mean, in the valley also. And that 10%, that 10% of the territory of Manipur is the best part of the land, the most fertile, and it has a carrying capacity which is about almost 100 times that is of the hills, because the hills have very few areas that are humanly habitable. They are important for ecological and other purposes, but for habitation, they are simply inhabitable. Steep mountains, ravines, and the habitable area would be just about 10 to 15% of that 90%.
Isn't it justified demand from the majority community that 90% land should also be unlocked for them?
That was the traditional kingdom. If I were to take on the narrative building of going back to pre-India history, that was always the area occupied by the Meitei community. And the hills always belonged to the tribals. And just because they're in majority, is it right that they should demand the land of the tribals? Just because you have a big family and your neighbor has a small family, does it give you the right to demand half their house? It doesn't.
No, I'll ask you last question. More than 150 people have been killed in this violence.
150 is an understatement, like I say.
I'm going by the state numbers.
Yes.
Over 400 injured, more than 50,000 have been displaced. I mean, of course, these are not numbers. This is a big humanitarian crisis that India has seen in decades.
Yes.
But is it possible for both the communities to coexist, and how peace can be achieved?
Yeah, of course. We have to coexist, but as neighbors, under different administrative setups.
But you can't coexist in the same boundary, within the boundary of a state, the boundary of Manipur.
That has been made impossible by the majority community. They have driven us out, and they are the majority. Forget about the minority community going back to their lives in Imphal. Today, even Meitei would not dare to come back to the hills. That's the kind of separation that they have affected. So the best way forward is for the government of India to recognize the segregation and give it an official administrative recognition. Then, with mutual respect, in time, hopefully we'll learn to be good neighbors, respecting each other.
Well, it seems it could be a long drawn process, but immediately how the authorities, the central government or state government can put out the flames of violence?
Like I said, give the army a free hand. The army can create effective buffer zones, and that will be the end of violence. As long as you hold back the army, as long as you have the chief minister, a biased chief minister, as the chairman of the joint committee on security in the state, I don't foresee peace coming soon, or not peace, but the end of violence coming soon.
So thank you so much for giving us this interview. And you've been very candid in your thought, in your remarks.
I mean, we all have to speak the truth for the country to progress, for peace to come and reign in our land. We cannot have petty party political agendas and petty vested interest disturbing the country and the progress of our people. We have much lack to fill to be a developed country, and we should not be held back by such troubles, unfortunate troubles, because of lack of straightforwardness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.